Hey everyone, welcome to the Leader's Edge, your path to personal and leadership growth. I'm your host, Steve Steele, alongside my co-host and partner in leadership, Ernalita de Cumos. And as certified speakers, coaches, and corporate facilitators, we're dedicated to bringing you powerful principles to fuel your leadership journey and personal growth. Now, whether you're an entrepreneur just starting out or a new leader taking the reins, or a seasoned pro looking to refine your skills, this show is for you. We'll be diving deep into personal growth strategies to help you strengthen your mindset and your leadership abilities. But before we jump in, a huge shout out goes to all of our amazing listeners. And one of them listening today happens to be a really fan favorite, Tanya Gillespie. So welcome, Tanya. Glad to have you on the show. And thank you for joining us each and every week. We wouldn't be here without your incredible support. Now, let's get down to business and help you unlock your full potential. How is my gorgeous partner today, Ernalita de Cumos? How are you?
Oh, partner, handsome Mr. Steele. Thank you for the gorgeous. I'm gorgeous today. How are you
Well,
doing?
I thought I would level up a little bit from last week, you
Yes.
know. So I'm doing great, Ernie. Thank you so much. It's going to be a wonderful day. We have an amazing guest today, and when we did our content build on him last week, actually, it was a couple of weeks
Last
ago, or maybe
month.
last
Last
month.
month.
Tells you how busy we are. I can't keep up with it. But I loved it. It was just amazing. And we got a really cool show for you today. So, Ernie, tell us a little bit about who this man is.
Yes, this amazing man that we have this morning is passionate about helping people find the right seat on the right bus, aligning personal strengths with meaningful, impactful work. A former CPA turned international leadership coach, he knows firsthand the cost of misalignment and is committed to empowering leaders and teams to build high-performing cultures where people thrive. From entrepreneurs to Fortune 50 companies, he brings strategic insight, operational know how, and heart to every engagement. Known for creating safe spaces for real known connection and growth, he's a sought after consultant worldwide. Above all, he is a proud girl dad to Charlie, 9 years old, and Chamberlain, 6, who keep him grounded, inspired, and ever evolving, both as a coach and as a human. Everyone, please help us in welcoming Mr. Payne Schoen to the green room.
Oh, Payne is so glad to see you today. We have been waiting to do the show. We had to postpone it because of a holiday. And so
Yes.
we had I guess we had scheduled it. So, but thank you so much for being here. It's amazing, and I'm so excited about you and what you're going to share with us today. So today, Payne, the name of our show, or the title of our show, is called "The Silver Bullet." Now, this is really intriguing to me. The Silver Bullet: Cracking the Code to Workplace Engagement. Now, we got a code to crack today, Shane. So you're going to have to help us crack this code, right? But before we really get started into it, tell us a little bit about your journey, a little bit about what you've been doing and what brought you to this part.
Yeah, Steve and Ernalita, thank you so much for having me here. I've been looking forward to this conversation for quite some time. You all have had some amazing guests on your podcast. I definitely binged a lot of your shows from
Mm,
episodes like Tim Novak and Gary White to, we talked about it before we hopped on, Bob Berg. I mean, one of my favorite
yeah.
authors. So just an honor and a privilege to be here and just spend some time with y'all learning and going on this journey together. Just my background from a very high level. I tell everybody I'm a recovering CPA. I spent the
Yeah.
first 5 years of my career doing tax returns and audits, and I describe it as the longest decade of my life because
Mm,
I learned firsthand what it was like to be in the wrong seat. And for the longest time, I thought, man, what a waste of a big chunk of my early career. Like I felt like I was so far behind the eight ball, but like most of life, it's only understood through the rearview mirror. And so looking back, I now understand how that wasn't a setback, but really a setup to get to serve some amazing teams all over the world, focusing on helping make sure people are in the right seat on the right bus, because I know what it's like firsthand not to be, and doing work that's meaningful to them and their organization, because I think that's where the magic happens. And we talk about a silver bullet. There's no quick fix. The silver bullet is nothing magical of, hey, I think about the Matrix. I take this pill and I solve it. Well, no, it's not that. But there is a specific culture, system, and process that you can put together that can help lead your organization there. So thank you again for having me, and I'm excited about this conversation.
Oh, we need to dive in. Yeah.
Yes. So you kind of touched on it already, Payne, which is the culture, right? In the workplace. You have helped a lot of companies and as an international leadership coach. There's a lot of clients that you've dealt with and learned about their cultures. Hence, the teaching today is what that culture looks like. Can you dive in a little bit as to like high level what that normally looks like in a workplace environment?
Yeah, I've truly had the honor and the privilege to serve people all around the world. When I left corporate America 4 years ago, I never thought I'd be where I am today. Some days I start my morning in Asia and end my morning in Asia, or end my day in Asia because of the time differences. Some day it's amazing how that happens. But what's been shocking, but it shouldn't have been to me, is what I've found that might go against modern culture is the majority of people are doing the best they can with the resources they have and the knowledge they have.
Yeah.
And I
Yes.
don't
I
think
believe that.
yeah, and I don't think we see that in social media. I don't think we see that in the news. And it's so easy as leaders to be, oh my gosh, these millennials or these Gen Zers, if you want to talk about generation
Mm,
diversity, or you know what, I just can't get these people to do. And we've gotten to a place where sometimes we take the human out of work. And you talk about what does the culture look like in an organization that's thriving. It's humanistic. It's not about just the product, and it's not about just the result. And I think it's easy to measure results, which is why we get there. I think there's a lot of different reasons, but I think we've gotten to a place in our culture where we focus more on short-term success than long-term strategy and proof. And in that balance and that dilemma, we oftentimes can lose sight of the people. And what I've found in the work that I've done, whether it be here locally in Illinois, or in London, or in Brussels, or in Shanghai, is people want to know, and it's the old adage that John talks about all the
mm,
time: three
Yeah.
questions.
Mm-hmm.
Does my leader care about me? Can I
yeah.
trust them? And do they help
Mm-hmm.
me? And if we
Absolutely.
focus on those three questions as a leader, and we get to
Mm-hmm.
know people, I think that culture naturally progresses.
I absolutely love that. And I even quoted that at a networking event I had this week, and I loved it. But Payne, you said something there that was really, it caught my attention. That sometimes the companies take the human out of work.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. And I've noticed this. A lot of now more corporate companies are going to more of metric driven companies where they have to meet these metrics, and their whole purpose is that what we can do for the customer or the client, instead of really focusing on what the team can do, right?
Mm.
So I'm wondering if you're finding that kind of thing, because the thing is that when we take the employee, or we take the team member out of it, and we just strictly figure on metrics and think about metric driven business, and it's all good for the guest, or it's all good for the customer, it's all good for the client. How does that hurt? How does that affect the relationship that you have in your environment with your team members or your employees?
Yeah, I think we fall into this trap. It's easy to measure tangible results. It's easy to
Mm-hmm.
say, here's your sales target, go hit it. It's easy
Hmm.
to say, here's your production target, go hit it. It's easy to say, here's the calls that you have to make, go make them. But it's a lot harder to measure the tangible impact, the intangible things that prolong over time, the development paths. I think one of the things I've found in the corporate world, we like to talk about personal growth and development, but it's not easy there's no real tool that's just easy and a framework to use that works for everybody. It
Mm-hmm.
has to be customized, it has to be personalized, and most importantly, I think this is, we talk about the silver bullet, and a lot of it came from Gallup's study. They do this annual study of the
Mhm.
state of the workplace, the global
Yep.
workplace. And here they just published the 2025 report earlier this year, and they found that engagement went down for the second time in the last decade. And
They're
what
right.
drove it this time was a decline in manager engagement. And what they found was, especially in two demographics of managers under 35 and female managers. And as they peeled back the onion, they realized that when managers aren't resourced and aren't developed to lead the way they need to lead, they're stuck between this rock and a hard place, between executives casting vision and handing
Yes.
down direction, and their team needing to execute on it. And they have to figure out, well, how do I take this vision and materialize it, and I'm not even resourced.
Right.
I
Yeah.
don't,
Right.
I don't know if you guys run into this problem, and I'll pause
Yeah.
and get your guys'
Yeah.
perspective in a second. But I've oftentimes found, especially in those first line leaders, we promote people based on the success they had in their role. So my success at being a salesperson, my success at being
Yes.
a production person, an individual contributor. We don't promote them based on their potential to develop and lead people. And there's a
Exactly.
Yes.
big difference between me being able to
Oh yeah.
sell and hit a target, and me being able to coach people to get there. And
Yeah.
that's the dynamic. I think we have
Yeah.
a big gap in our society, in our country, and in engagement.
I agree with that. I agree with that whole. Ernie, can I follow up real quick?
Yes.
So, you know, Payne, in the experiences I've had, I've seen where companies go in and they sit down. They, like you said, they have a person maybe was successful at whatever they're successful at, but they say that they're working in leadership. They say that they're training leaders, but going into a meeting and going over a bunch of words on a page, and this is what you should do, and this is what you should do, and this is what you should do, or you should behave this way, or you should have this kind of, or you might do this little exercise here. That is not leadership development. Do you agree? I mean,
I
I mean,
100% agree. I mean, take it back to as we were kids. When our
Mm.
parents told us, at least for me, I grew up the middle child, prototypical middle child. When my parents told me to do something, especially with something I didn't want to do, there was a high probability I wasn't going to do it.
right,
And the research shows that if you tell somebody something, they're highly unlikely to do it unless they already agree with it and it was already in alignment with what their behaviors were. But if I tell you,
Mm.
hey, Steve, you got to start listening more. But you're a bulldog or you're a bull in a china shop, because that's the effective sales approach you've taken. If you're in a sales organization, you're going to say, yeah, I hear you. That might be important, but this is how I've gotten results. And so you're telling
Mm.
me this. I don't understand the why. This is proven. I'm going to do what I know, because we're
mhm,
creatures of habit. I'm going to do what I know, not what you tell me to. So 100% I
Yeah.
agree.
I 1000% I agree. No one, I am a woman, and I speak for probably
no,
myself and
yeah,
a lot of women out there. And we don't like being told what to do. So there is an art to it.
Nobody
There is,
does.
right?
he does right.
There is an art to it. They have to buy in into the idea. They have to buy in into that whatever that task is. But I love that we're talking about the workplace environment and engagement. I know on that Gallup study, you also have indicators, right, that you have learned in that study. Do you mind naming a couple of them, Payne, and sharing that with us this morning?
When you talk indicators, what do you mean indicators?
The 21 indicators, or I believe there is 13 indicators on that, like if they have a okay. You got
Yeah. So you're
it.
talking. So this is Gallup's. This is their
Yeah.
what's the word called? Proprietary content, but it's public on knowledge. They
Yes.
really have 12 metrics, 12 questions that they use in this survey, and you can find these
Hmm.
online. They're actually pretty straightforward. I'm going to pull them up while we're talking, just so that I can speak to them. But they're the amazing part of it. It's not rocket science, and I don't know about
Yes.
y'all, but I think a lot of leadership and a lot of life is not rocket science. But we
Right.
as humans, for whatever reason, have this a gift of making things much more complicated, much more harder, much more convoluted than it needs to be. And maybe
Mm.
it comes with free will or choice. And now in modern society, we have so many choices. What if I make the wrong choice? But a couple of them that blow my mind. I actually was just at a conference in a group with a group here a month or so ago, and there was a woman talking about community, and
Mm.
it's amazing the impact community has. And this woman, Liz Bohannon is her name. She's written a couple books. She founded a couple companies. Amazing woman. But what she got to was she shared some research that was amazing. It came from Gallup. If you have a work best friend, so if you have a work bestie, you are 7 times more likely to be engaged. And it just
Mm.
goes to show if you have meaningful, important relationships in your workplace, and historically we've always thought, well, we got to keep those separate. Well, no, if you have that, you're 7 times more engaged, you're more productive, you're less absent, you're more loyal, you're more committed. And so recognizing that it's not about just getting work done, it's about creating community, because community
Yeah.
is important. That's one of the huge indicators. When you look at this, it's not rocket science, it's humanistic, keeping the humanity in work.
I love that. Going back
Mm.
and circling around with the humanistic side of leading. I know there's 12, as you mentioned, Payne, and we will go over this, but we will need to take a quick break. Payne just shared how he started with his journey of being an international leadership coach, and then the pains that he noticed in the workplace environment. When we return, we will dive into the indicators from the Gallup study. We will be right back to the Leader's Edge.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Leader's Edge. I'm Steve Steele, your host, and my co-host Ernie DeCumos is with us. And today we have our special guest, Payne Schoen. So, Payne, we dove in a little bit to that last segment, and we kind of covered a few things, so a little bit about who you are, what you're doing, and internationally, and we're talking a little bit about developing people and how that works in the workplace. And we I want to go further into that. I want to go deeper into that. I want to talk about after the person really starts learning and they start developing and they start growing, what comes next? What happens next?
Yeah, when I look at it, I look at it and I put it in these four buckets. You just talked about learning and growing. So I need to have the ability to continue to grow. It's the you're either growing, you're dying, right? It's the old adage of that. And what's fascinating to me, and this has been my experience, I would love to hear your guys' experiences. And Marcus Buckingham does a lot of research. I love Marcus Buckingham from this perspective is how modern culture develops us and teaches us to learn. If you look at our education system, and I'm not knocking education by any means, we've got some amazing educators and they're doing a job that I think is nearly impossible, but it was designed hundreds of years ago to really help move us through an industrial revolution and have people have skills when they come out that will help them in a manufacturing or industrial job. It
Mm-hmm.
didn't teach people how to learn, how to grow. It didn't teach them self-discovery. It didn't teach them personal growth. And what I found, I learned a lot of that through sports and athletics. But when I got into the professional world, it was really left on my own. I resonated with John Maxwell's story where he had somebody, it was Kurt Herbsmeyer or somebody that says, "Hey, well, what's your personal growth strategy?" And he's like, "I
Yeah.
have no idea. I spent the better part of a decade of my professional career saying, I don't know what my personal growth strategy is." And I wasn't alone. I'm finding that most people don't have that. And so as organizations, we can have a differentiator. One of our differentiators could be we develop our people. You look at
Yes.
Chick-fil-A, they're not a chicken company. They're in the people business
People
and they're in the
business.
Yes.
people development business and in the high school kid development business. And oh, by the way, they're one of the most successful quick serve restaurants is what they call themselves, not fast food, quick serve restaurants in the country. And so recognizing it's not about just how many hamburgers or how many chicken sandwiches I can make. If I can develop people and get them to see that purpose, that's huge.
Mm.
Like other pieces, we talked about that one a little bit in the last session is, okay, I know I'm being developed and grown. I have a clear understanding of what success looks like. I know where I'm trying to get. I know where I'm going. I know how I can do what I'm supposed to do, what's expected of me. And then is there a culture I'm doing it with people I know, like, and trust? And if that's the core components when I look at a healthy culture of how do we get people to succeed, teams to succeed. And there's so many dynamics we can dive into of what prevents it or what gets in the way or how we do that. But I want to get your guys' perspective on that.
I definitely agree with that because it, a lot of times all we wanted to do is have a sense of belonging, right? Being a part of something. And like we said earlier, we don't like being told what to do, but we have to buy in into the idea. And that's how we're able to not persuade, but to gain the trust, the credibility, and the initiative from our employees or any colleague that we work with. In that aspect, I love that you gave us the four things. Am I going to learn and grow? Knowing the mission and vision, right? Working with people that I like and trust. And I lost the other one.
Clear direction. Giving the clear direction.
Giving a clear direction. So those four, I can't write fast enough. But having those fours, and I love the structure of it. I love what you said. What are the challenges that we face today that's causing us not to have those in a workplace environment? Do you mind giving us a
Ooh, I
few
like that question.
example, Payne?
Good question.
Absolutely. I think one of the areas that I love the most is emotional intelligence. I think we're talking,
Mm.
you're hearing
Mm,
mainstream now, and everybody's like, well, what is it? The way I describe it, it very simply is I understand my emotions and the impact they have on my actions. I can understand and interpret other people's emotions and the impact they have on their actions. So self-awareness, social awareness, and then when it comes to a leader, it's understanding other people's emotions and how I can help develop and grow them so that they can be successful. And so when I think about emotional intelligence, it's understanding, hey, where am I going to get in my own way? And it's funny, as I started coaching informally and then more formally about 5, 6 years ago, my biggest challenge was not telling my coaching clients what the solution was. Goes back to the oldest adage, hey, I see it. And
Yes.
sometimes as leaders, we can see what's getting in their way, but if they're not in a place or they're not ready to hear it, it's going to fall on deaf ears. And so
Mm-hmm.
being able to really get laser focused in I take the approach when I coach now is simply what's preventing this client from solving this problem on their own. And I focus on that versus the actual problem, because the better problem solver they can become, the better problems and bigger problems they're going to solve. And I used
Mm.
to think in leadership, it's like I was going to get to this place in leadership where I wouldn't have to solve any problems. And then I was reading one of John's books, and he was talking about the transition between I always forget, Dwight Eisenhower and John F. Kennedy, I think, is when they handed off the presidency. And whenever a president retires and hands the baton off, they write him a letter. And in the letter to JFK, Eisenhower wrote, hey, congratulations. No easy problem ever hits this desk. If it were easy, somebody below you would have solved it. And I'm thinking, man, if
That is
the
true.
leader of the free world does not have easy problems and doesn't get to just sit there and relax, how do I think that I'm going to get to a leadership position where I'm not going to have those? So really, it
Mm.
kind of was a paradigm change for me of it's not about not solving problems. It's about solving bigger, harder, and building people up. Ultimately, John talks about level 4 leadership, developing problem solvers. And
Right.
so
Yeah.
that's where I think one of the biggest challenges is, am I emotionally intelligent enough to know myself? I think that's the first part of I have a high self-awareness. Okay, great. I know how my emotions impact my actions and I can manage those. But then the next step is, all right, I am not like everybody else, and there are different people. I use several tools to help shed light on this, but now I can start understanding that person over there, they're much more logical, analytical, not as much emotional, not as relational, seem a little bit more guarded. I could very easily judge them as unhappy or skeptical or a perfectionist. But really, what they do is they bring some incredible insight and strategy onto this team. But unless I build a relationship of trust and understanding with them, they're not going to bring their best self, and I'm not going to bring my best self. And so here we are. We're going to be in that proverbial boat, and I'm going to be rowing that way, and they're going to be rowing this way, and we're just going to be spinning in circles.
Yeah, and that's exactly what I was going to bring to the table, was the fact that every particular leader that you're working with, and you're talking about emotional intelligence, every particular leader you're working with is a different type of person. And so
Yeah.
that would require not to have a blanket, this is how you become a leader, and step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, and these are the kinds of things you need to know about it. But that would require a personal relationship with that leader to help them grow, to help them become the person they need to be, right?
Yep.
It has to
Yep.
become a relationship. And that's where you said the trust comes in, the help comes in, and the do you care about me comes in, because that's all you really want to know.
Yep.
Then once you've got that locked in, that trust is there, and that relationship is beginning to form and build, then you can start pouring in to helping them solve the problems that they have, right?
Yes.
So, I mean, I absolutely love that. And I think it's beautiful. But oftentimes in our corporate world, they don't approach it that way at all, period. It doesn't happen. So, Payne, how do you get in a corporate world, how do you get them to see that?
Yeah, it's
That's hard.
funny. It is. And so just like leaders have to build that know, like, and trust factor, so do
Mm.
consultants. And so when I go in, I don't go in to immediately solve problems, immediately change things. Early in my leadership career, when I was still in the corporate world, I was like, I got to prove myself.
Mhm,
And I had to change that paradigm of no, I need to connect and understand. And so I spend a
mhm,
lot of time on the front end, especially with the leader, understanding what are the challenges, what are the opportunities, because
Yeah.
we have a tendency to focus just on the challenges, just on the weaknesses, just on the deficits. And I heard it said one time, it's a lot easier to make changes when you're growing and winning than it is when you're losing and you're having to scale back. And so if you focus in on the wins, the success, the strengths that a team has, and help get some low hanging fruit, it will build it'll build that momentum that will allow you to come in and challenge it. I told you I use a couple of tools. One of my favorite tools is a behavior tool. I use DISC. There's a
Yeah.
ton of tools out there. The reason I use DISC is because it's simple. I like simple
Yep,
things.
it
Four
really is.
categories versus eight different strata or 8 sections or 8 wings, whatever it is. It
Mhm.
doesn't matter. The tool is all about self-awareness, and so I'll use it with the team. And it's amazing whether I'm here locally in the States or overseas in Europe or Asia. It resonates because it's all about themselves, and people like talking about themselves,
Mm.
especially when it's about their strengths. And we use it from a lens of, okay, I understand, and I better understand the actions and behaviors of Payne because he's an ID personality style, which is very fast paced, action oriented, driven by relationships, can be distracted very easy, sometimes doesn't follow through, needs inspiration, likes that affirmation and social acceptance. Or, and going back to where I started in the public accounting world, it was much more reserved, thoughtful, internal processors. And one of the reasons I didn't succeed in that role, or I was in such a hard spot, I didn't understand this. And once you start to shed light and bring awareness to, oh, it's not that you're right and I'm wrong, or I'm wrong and you're right, it's you see it differently. And
Mm.
you know what? That's not a bad thing. Help me understand how you see it first and why you see it that way, and we can build from there.
Mm. I'm gonna be a devil's advocate in this scenario. I want to go
Please.
back. I'm gonna go back to I love the concept, and that's, being a what's the word that I'm looking for? Being a well-aware leader. And it has to start with us. And I love that you mentioned pain is more so of self-awareness. If I am a leader and I'm starting, right? I'm listening to this episode and I want to learn how to become an effective leader where I can bring all four categories that you mentioned earlier. Where do I start from there in my self-awareness journey?
Yeah, I think the first question that I would ask is, why do you want to be a leader?
Yeah.
Mm.
What's your motive? Because I can, if I'm completely honest and vulnerable here for a minute, my motive early on was I wanted people to listen to me and I wanted people to follow me. And
Mm.
and when you try to force that, it goes back to, I think, what John says, the old parable. If you're if you're leading and no one's following, you're merely taking a walk, right? And so if you're a hammer and everything looks like a nail, you're just going to start nailing everybody. And so I think it really starts with, why do you want to be a leader? And sometimes I think, especially those high achievers, those high potentials, those individual contributors that are winning, they want to do it because it's the next stage of their career. It's the next progression. And that is a very low level of leadership. It's positional, right? I
Yeah.
think I've heard it
Yes.
on your conversation, on your podcast or your radio show before, John's five levels. It's positional. And that is the death of all leaders. You want to get off of that level as quickly as possible. So the next thing, you start building relationships. So I want to know why I do what I do. And then I want to know why my people do what they do. Like, if I'm leading a team, I want to know what matters to them. I want to
Right.
know what drives them. I want to know what motivates them. I want to know what their desires, their challenges are, so that I can help them win. I can help them succeed. And then, again, going through that levels, the next one is, let's get results together. Let me model how we get the
Yeah.
results, and let's do it together. So if I'm a new leader, that's the questions I would ask. It's first, why do I want to be a leader? Why should my people follow me? And that's
Yes.
ultimately is, I got to understand what's important to them, so I can tie their interests to our mission. And it can be done. It just takes work. I've got to spend that time getting to know them, what they like, what they don't like. And really, sometimes, if the team that I'm leading is not highly self-aware, I got to start there and help them become self-aware.
Oh,
That's amazing. I love that. One of the things to Payne is the fact that, um, but I had it on top of my head now. I've kind of lost my thought. But we talked about the relationships in building the
mhm.
relationships with the people, and oftentimes, it takes time to do that. Right? You said that a minute ago. It takes time, but oftentimes our leaders don't take the time to really invest that time into those leaders. That it's to make those investments, you got to walk into that thing we have to walk into that thing every single day with them. At some level, you've got to walk
Yeah.
into them almost every single day. When you don't have the time to do that, then that investment's wasted. And there's got to be time placed there, right? So yeah, I love that. It was beautiful.
If and I go back, you don't have to look. I'm not. Leaders have one of the hardest jobs today now more than
Yeah.
ever with the retention issues, with AI, with technology, with all of these forces and these factors. I oftentimes think, well, if you don't have the time now, how are you going to have the time later to fix the problem that's going to be created, to
Yeah.
replace that person who decided, you know what, this isn't the place for me because nobody cares for me. And so recognizing, hey, this is a priority issue. And again, going back to Marcus Buckingham, I use his approach because I think it's so stinking good. If you
Mm-hmm.
have a one-on-one meeting with each of your teammates every week for 15 minutes, that's really all it takes. Doesn't happen overnight. And he asks 3 questions in that one-on-one meeting, and I've molded them a little bit, but I really like him. What did you, especially for low self-aware leaders? So if you're leading a team, not so low self-aware leaders, low self-aware individual contributors. So if you're leading a young team or you're getting ready to step into a leadership position, this could be a system that you build because you help develop self-awareness just by asking these 3 questions every week, week after week. 3 questions are: what did you do this week that you loved? What did you do this week that you hated or loathed? And what are your priorities next week? It's not a meeting to go through all of the open items, the punch list, all of this. It's simply a meeting to build that relationship. And if I'm a leader that's not strong in the relational spot, but I am very good at production, this is an easy, low
Yeah.
effort system that if I have 6 direct reports, it's going to take me, what's that, an hour and a half. So an hour and a half of my time. So let's say 2 hours prepping, and all I'm going to do is take some notes. And what I'm doing is if I ask that question week over week over week, I'm going to start seeing the red threads, the commonalities, the common answers. You know what? I really love when I'm working in this team, talking about this topic that's doing this thing. All right, how do I get that person, not all of his work, but how do I get at least 25% of that person's work in that area? Because man, he's going to thrive in that place.
Ah, beautiful. Love
That
that.
that is definitely beautiful. I've been waiting for that to be shared. So thank you for sharing that, Payne. This segment is going by fast. We will need to take another break. We just dove into the 4 key cultures. I'm gonna try this again. Learning and growing. The culture that they're looking for is if the person is learning and growing. You know where they are headed, knowing the mission and vision. Doing it with the people that they know, like, and trust, and then having a clear direction. When we return,
I think that fourth is that they know they're adding value. They're a valuable
Yes,
they know.
adding
contributor.
value.
That
Okay,
was the
they know
fourth.
that they are adding value. Adding
Yep.
value. Thank you for clearing pain. When we return, I'm gonna leave a cliffhanger here. We will not share what we will talk about. We will be right back. So you have to stay tuned. You will be right back to the Leader's Edge.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Leader's Edge, your path to personal leadership growth with Steve and Ernie. And our guest today is amazing Payne Schoen. And we've had a wonderful, wonderful time today on the Leader's Edge. Thank you, Payne, so much. We got a last little section. Ernie kind of left a cliffhanger there. And so I'm going to tell him what we're going to do. So here's what we're going to do. Payne, you're going to actually pretend that Ernie is an employee of yours. And you're going to coach her on the three things we talked about earlier. What did you like about this week? What did you absolutely not like or loathe this week? And what are your priorities this week? You're going to coach her in that. And for the next 8 or 9 minutes here. So take it away, Payne. Let's see what we got.
Yeah. So the last question is what is your priorities for next week? And so Ernalita, I just love to know, hey, what were some of the things that you loved, you that filled your cup, that you really excited you about the work you did this week?
Thank you for that question, Payne. I feel like I'm being interviewed. Disclaimer, this is last minute. But the one of the things that I love this week is my brother's girlfriend came in town, and it has been a phenomenal week. We've done so many things, ate a lot of food, and last night alone, I brought them to a gala and spent a very good night there, just basically helping raise funds for kidney kidney victims or patients who are needing kidney replacement. So that has been the highlight of my week.
Love that. It sounds like family time, good food, and
Yes.
directing efforts towards something that really mattered and impactful, bigger than yourselves even, huh?
Yes, definitely.
So, second question, what are some of the challenges? What are some of the things that you didn't like, that you, using Marcus Buckingham's, or loathed this week?
I think a lot of people would agree to this is working, working a lot of hours, which eh, when you're busy is more so trying to juggle personal and work-life balance and at the same time with my schedule more so of uh, consulting and doing a full-time job and radio show and scheduling. So just a lot of hours with work.
So it sounds like you're juggling a lot of different things. What is your approach, and what's your system to prioritizing, making sure you're doing the most important things at the right time?
I love that. I've learned this quote a long time ago, and it goes like, "Do not make the calendar work you, make your calendar work for you." And with me, I highly depend on my calendar. That if it's not on my calendar, it's not going to happen. So that's what keeps me balanced and going, and know what my next direction would be.
Gotcha. And how do you prioritize, schedule out? What does your calendar look like?
I do have different categories on my calendar. There's and different colors, like I'm a woman. So my favorite color will be the productive color in my calendar. And that means when it's in that color, it's something that is a non-negotiable and I have to do it. I do have a self-love and self-care category, which I focus on family or more so taking care of myself, learning and training. That's something that I do have on my calendar too, which is personal growth. So those are the examples that I have. And brown is adding value on my calendar. So it's another non-negotiable that I have.
Love that. I love that. So you talked about with the love, or the things you loved. It was that relational, that family time, the food, the raising funds, working a lot of hours right now with the challenges, working a lot of hours, wearing a lot of hats. What are your biggest, maybe top three priorities as you look towards next week?
My birthday is coming up next week, so that is my priority. It's self-love and self-care
Love it.
and spending it with family. And obviously, Mr. Steele is coming down to California tomorrow, and we'll be spending that time with him then. And also, I believe what we do best is adding value to others. So there, we have a workshop Saturday or a mastermind Saturday, and Mr. Steele is teaching on Monday. So that's another priority. And we're going to have lunch with potential partners on Monday as well. So
Love it.
business, fun, family. And what else could I ask for?
I love that. So it sounds like you're checking a lot of different boxes. As you look towards your priorities next week, what's the one thing that you know that you need to do that will help you, maybe not next week, but 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks from now, start to feel less overwhelmed, start to feel like you're not working so many hours. What is that one thing that you need to do that maybe you're not doing or you need to do better?
Ooh, this would be a surprise. It would be focusing more on that birthday celebration. I know in our line of work, a lot of times we're on the go and we're not doing something, it's not productive. I've learned in my journey that time for stop or resets, grounding is one of the most important things that we can do because it's our time to reflect, time to refocus and have the clarity. And that's always something that I look forward to.
I love that. It takes me back to, you can't pour from an empty cup, right? And
Yes.
so nobody would have expected, well, I'm going to focus on my birthday celebration. That will help me be less productive or less overwhelmed, less swimming, less underwater. But that's the thing that you needed. Now, as your leader, I maybe wouldn't have said that. And knowing you now, what are you going to do to make sure you guard the time and you actually do the preparation and planning you said you have to do?
Oh, add two things. Put my phone on silent and make sure that you have somebody who will remind you and carry you to make sure you do that. And I happen to be blessed with friends like that.
Awesome. So
Love it.
my question is, when are you going to put your phone on silent? Do you have a time, a day and a time in your calendar? You said you were a calendar person. Is it scheduled in your calendar?
Yes, it is scheduled on my calendar. I guess I'm going to take this as an accountability. I will put my phone on silent on Sunday, July 21st at 7 a.m. Pacific Standard Time.
Perfect. And you said you had a couple of friends that help hold you accountable. When are you going to reach out to them and say, "Hey, this is what I'm doing, and would you hold me accountable?"
It's been planned. They are coming with us. They are driving us to the beach and make sure that everything happens accordingly.
Awesome. Awesome. So is there anything that you can foresee right now that might get in the way of that?
I don't think so, to be honest with you. It's happening.
It's happening.
I love that, and what I love about that is you have identified what is most important. And I mean, if we want to tie this all together and we go back to leadership,
Mm-hmm.
it's that old adage of balancing productivity and the humanity that we've talked about so many times here. And if you're a low self-aware leader, and I'm leading Ernalita in this example, and that she says, well, it's really important for me to make sure I celebrate my birthday, but we have 4 deadlines that are coming up,
Yes.
and we don't have the capacity. It's very easy for me to say, Ernalita, that's not a priority. Do that next year. But instead, knowing where you're at and knowing that, you just got through a really long week, and one of the lows, even though you got to spend time with family, was I'm working a lot of hours, and
Mm-hmm.
recognizing that prioritizing that family time is super important. And so being able to do that and give the power to Ernalita, but then also start to recognize, if we were to do this week over week over
Yeah.
week, I would start peeling back the onion, and I would start to see some commonalities. When I get really stressed and overwhelmed, I start scrolling on my phone a lot more.
Yep.
Or when I've got a big project coming up, I procrastinate out of fear. And so
Mm-hmm.
if I've got a team member that struggles with that, I'm going to, as their leader, know that and start helping them. All right, what are you doing to plan that project? What do you need to do this week to move that project forward so that we don't get 7 weeks away from now and we're a week out of the project and you've done nothing? And
Mm-hmm.
so understanding those conversations, that I know, man, I know that Ernalita, family time is very important.
Yep.
So if I don't hear Ernalita talking about family time week after week, I'm going to ask her, hey, I noticed I haven't heard anything about your family here recently.
Mm-hmm.
What's going on? Are you prioritizing what? I know one of her values, even without going through that value, must be relationship and family time.
Yes.
Oh,
And you
absolutely
broke it down.
beautiful.
That was beautiful.
That was great job, guys. Awesome. And I want to let the audience know that was not something that we just planned out. It was something that we put together, and that Ernie and Payne did together. So great job. I loved it. Beautiful, beautiful. I learned something about Ernita too. So it was awesome. It was so awesome.
Remember priorities,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah. It was. It was great. Thank you guys for doing that. I appreciate that.
Yes, Payne. That is an amazing session, and I know it's last minute, but I mean, we winged it beautifully.
It goes back to what we said at the beginning. It's not rocket science. I mean, it's
Yes.
truly I one of my gifts and my superpowers is the ability to connect with people. I'm curious. I love people. It's my superpower, my kryptonite all in one. But just asking a few questions, even if I'm not very relational, I can start to pick up those key themes. And I think what we just saw in that short conversation right there is it doesn't have to be hard. And it
No.
might be clunky at first because you'd never done it, but this is the first time I've talked to Ernalita on live air, and maybe the first third time in our entire life. It's not as though we had a huge relationship prior to this, but
Right.
we were able to just have a conversation, and I listened, not to
Yes.
respond, but to understand what was going on, and started to understand, this is really important to her. How do I help her
Mm-hmm.
achieve that? Because if I can help her get the things that are important to her, she's going to help
Yeah,
us too. She's going to come better.
Absolutely. Beautiful.
for sure, for
I
sure.
love it.
Well, Payne, I'm sure our listeners are wondering, what are you currently working on, and how can people connect with you?
Yeah, you can connect with me. I'm on the socials, so Payne Schoen on the socials. My website's Payne Schoen Consulting, which is actually under construction right now, so forgive me. But what I'm working on, most excited about right now, is I'm in the process of building a community locally here of high capacity leaders. I've been a part of these groups for a long time, and as I continue to work in the corporate space, I'm realizing there's this void, there's this gap
Mm,
of community for leaders who are mid to senior level leaders that feel isolated. They're not the top level. They're not individual contributors, but they just need a community to recognize, hey, I'm not alone. And hey, how do
yeah,
I get resources? How do I learn together? How do I share experience together? How do I build meaningful relationships? Because I think we're having a void right now in relationships. And so I'm super excited about that community, pulling it together and what it's going to look like, and just being able to serve people and bring people together that are like-minded, trying to do good things, make
yeah.
positive impacts, and invest in their teams.
That is cool. That is so cool. Thank you so much, Payne. Greatly appreciate that. Uh, and you hit it on the head when we talk about leadership. And it's like Simon Sinek always said, leadership is not about being in charge. It's about taking care of people in your charge. And I wholeheartedly believe that with all my heart.
Mm.
Next week on The Leader's Edge, join us for our very real and hilarious, I know it's going to be hilarious, conversation with Jody Filler. Jody is a comedian, a speaker, a writer, and a soldier. And next week is on the title of our show next week is On Flaws and All, the power of advertising your imperfections. Wow, that sounds amazing. I can't wait to hear. And as always, Payne, thank you so much for today. It was a great, great time with you. And thank you, Ernie, for being our coach E and for Payne being our coach. Thank you so much for that.
Thank you
Pleasure.
so much. We wanted to say thank you to all of our listeners and friends, because without you, the Leader's Edge would not be possible. We're excited to connect with you next time, but for